I came across Bubbly Water's video yesterday afternoon, and I've come across her videos before, and usually I'll just leave comments on them trying to correct her on her misinformation, but it doesn't seem to help. And then she just gets really mad and calls me rude and mean because I'm pointing out where she's wrong. But today's video just kind of took the cake. It got under my skin. And I'm going to play segments of her video, and I'm going to discuss why she's incorrect on these things. Now, if you're a big Bubbly proponent, don't watch then. If you don't like how I counteract people and think I'm rude, then don't watch. Because, yeah, I probably am rude. Full disclosure, I have family that live in Pullman, Moscow. I grew up always going to Pullman and Moscow and to Potlatch and to Lewiston and to Colfax and to Uniontown and all those places. Because of relatives up there. We'd have family reunions up in those places. I went to WSU. I am very protective of Pullman and Moscow. And so it does get under my skin when people make claims about the two towns and the universities that have never even stepped foot in them. So people from all across the world, all across the country, that think they know everything about Pullman and Moscow and sweep with a broad brush, because that's what Bubbly's doing. She's sweeping with a broad paintbrush and just trying to drag both communities down. But I'm going to start out with her talking about Ann Taylor mentioning a couple months ago in a hearing that she had 400 potential witnesses to talk to.
How do you get 400 witnesses if that's not the case? Whether it be via internet, through a live stream, or if they were there. Or a live Facebook, they've got that too.
There was not a live stream. There was not a Facebook Live. There was nothing online. It's been over a year and a half. If there really had been anything recorded, it would have come out a long time ago. Things like that don't stay secret. Videos like that always make their way off the dark web. There was no live stream, and that's not who the 400 are that Anne wants to talk to.
But the 400 witnesses, maybe there was 400 people that put in bets, you know? Maybe there was 400 people that bought whatever tickets or whatever it was. Or where they put into the kitty or whatever it was, I don't know. But that 400 just keeps bugging me and bugging me and bugging me. And it has to be something on those lines, because 400, my God, you guys, that is so hard. It's unfathomable for me to even wrap that around my head, my brain. I just 400 people. I'm like, who knew who? Did they all know each other? Had they all met each other as an acquaintance? How did they all know? Who alerted them to this? Who started it? Who finished it? Who collected maybe the money, or who delved out, who handed out the tickets? Was it a bracelet? Was it a ticket? Was it a piece of paper? Was it just a notification on a phone? Was there a confirmation? Was there a receipt? Because if it was sent text-wise, or possibly Snapchat or whatever they do, I don't even know how that works, but I guess it disappears or something. But there would have been documentation of that, especially if it was a text. Who was in charge of that? Who was in charge of the flyers? I'm sure there weren't flyers, because that would have made it very, it would have been out into the open eye for everybody to see. But who was in control of what? Whose job? What were their jobs? What were each of their jobs? Did they get paid to do these jobs? Who felt remorse Who didn't? Who giggled? Who cried? Who was scared? Who was elated? Were there brothers and sisters that knew about it? Together? Were there parents involved in this? Teachers? Coaches? DoorDashers? Uberers? Ride shares? How many videos are there? And where are they? Were they edited or just sent straight out? And where were they sent? Who received them? Was it a secret mailbox? Were they immediately popped in an envelope, sealed, and sent somewhere? Or placed somewhere to be shipped out through UPS or FedEx or USPS, as early as possible? Was there a drop zone? Was there a pickup zone? Did the driver know about it? Were they in on it?
So she wants us to believe that the community is one big snuff film manufacturing place. Yep. Teachers were involved, students were involved, siblings were involved, parents were involved, DoorDash was involved, FedEx was involved. You got people slapping labels on videotapes and sending them out right after the murders. Yeah, no, I don't know whether to laugh or to cry, because it's laughable knowing the people in Moscow. They're not some big snuff ring. But I want to cry because I feel so bad that she really believes these things she's saying. I think she spent maybe too long looking into this case and is really starting to believe these things are true that aren't true. Now, as far as the 400 go, those are not eyewitnesses. These are potential witnesses that Anne wants to talk to that could provide exculpatory information or just information to help provide reasonable doubt at trial. These are going to include people that Brian was in contact with, the students he TA'd for, his fellow PhD students, the faculty members he was working under, people in an apartment complex that would see him coming and going or that he spoke to. It's going to include the victims' friends, the victims' classmates, their teachers, their employers, people that they spoke to before the murders. It's also going to be law enforcement. She's going to look at law enforcement statements and then interview them. This is all in preparation for trial to determine who she wants to put on the stand or who from the prosecution she wants to cross-examine. 400 is not unusual when you're considering there's 4 victims and 1 suspect, because that's a lot of people in their orbit that you need to touch bases with to get statements from. Now, in this next segment, she's acting like law enforcement was doing something out of the ordinary by doing minor in possession patrols on a late Saturday night, early Sunday morning.
What about the law enforcement? What did they know? What were they privy to? Why were they there coincidentally around the same time that this happened?
Okay, this is from the Moscow Police Department annual report. They have been getting a grant for the last 4 years for minor in possession patrols. So the patrols are conducted with 2 officer teams in plain clothes looking for obvious alcohol violations in public areas. So they call them party patrols. Like, this is nothing new. It's been going on at college campuses forever. When I was first up at WSU, one of the first things I was told is if you're walking from party to party, hold your container upside down with the lid off so that the cops don't stop you. Because otherwise they're going to walk over and say, hey, what's in your container? So if you're bringing your own container to a fraternity party to fill up with the Spodie or something, if you're walking from house to house, carry that thing upside down so that they don't think you're a minor in possession. So nothing suspicious about what these cops are doing. They have a grant to be doing those undercover patrols. So that's Not anything related to the murders that night. I know people want to try to claim that it was a diversion in the Banfield. It wasn't. They were driving along on their patrol and spotted college guys carrying alcohol. And that'll get a cop stopping you every time. Now, in this next segment, she goes on to make a big deal about one of the cops shining his flashlight on the other one while he's filling out a citation for the minor in possession, and a phrase that's used.
Did they know there was runners behind them? Did they know that shining that light right then and there, because, oh, you don't have enough light to write the ticket, although you've been writing this ticket all along with no light, but all of a sudden you feel like they need light to write the ticket? Was that just coincidence that happened? Was it coincidence that as it was happening, that officer with the flashlight was looking back, watching them cross the road, and then once they were done, he turned the light off, only to turn it back on 2 more times, because that was not the only runners, in my opinion. They covered it up a couple more times. What did they say when they got that notification at 3:15? Just as that person at the dumpster was walking out from that dumpster and walking off away from that dumpster, was on his phone, doing something, a text, a call, whatever. Exact same time, that cop down on Banfield got the notification. And then he said something like, well, they got her. And then the other cop giving the ticket almost looked up. He had kind of like a slight little, upturn of his lip. And then the other cop that was holding the flashlight said, you'll be able to see her, or you can see her. And that's when the other cop flashed a smile. You could see it. He hadn't smiled all night long, but he smiled then. What was he smiling about?
Same thing for you, 4750, okay?
Okay.
Get her. Alright. You can see her. There's a copy. Any questions?
No.
Alright, you're free to go.
Thank you.
Have a safe rest of your night, man.
Who is her? Was it a live person? Was it a deceased person? Some people call their pets a her, or their car a her. People name tornadoes after women.
I just have one thing to say about the whole her thing she's talking about.
Get her done.
Yep, get her done. Apparently she's never heard that phrase before. That cop was just shining the flashlight there, basically like, you see her? You got her? Talking about the ticket book. Nothing to do with a person. And can we just stop all the nonsense about the Banfield, like right now? The people running, anything else. It was a typical late night, early morning in a college town prior, to those murders happening. And the police released the Banfield body cam footage because it has nothing evidentiary in it. There's literally nothing in that footage that relates to the murders. The people running in the background, the cop and his flashlight had nothing to do with the people running in the background. The people running in the background had nothing to do with the murders. Wasn't even the same time as the murders were taking place, and you don't even know where they were running to and from. Could have been any apartments back there, could have been any houses back there, could have been from further on campus somewhere. It's all nonsense to keep dissecting the Banfield video. There's nothing in it that relates to the murders. Now this next segment, she decides to go after Rosendahl for some reason. And I don't quite understand what she's trying to get at.
Rosendahl had only been there since the December of the previous year. Yet he was so new to it, and he'd only been a police officer one other time up in Bellingham, which is another university town, Western Washington University. He was only there for a little over a year and a half, I think. Why'd he come back? How? I mean, I know he was born and raised in the church, right? The Christ Church. He went to both schools. He went to Logos School. He went to New St. Andrew's School, which is the college that they have through the church. That's his education. So we know he's from that town. His parents are missionaries. They travel and they do their missionary work, right? Was he requested to come back to help in some way for some reason? Is that why he came back? Did he get in trouble up there in Bellingham? Maybe that's why. Maybe that's a college town. He was on right there, college campus, right? What happened on that campus? If maybe that made he had to leave there. I do know he got a reckless driving around that time. Was he the officer showing up to those noise complaints in Bellingham? Was he taking those females photos of their IDs?
Okay, for the 5,000th time, he was not taking a photo of her ID. He was scanning the barcode on the back of the driver's license. Now, I don't get what any of this Rosendahl conversation has to do with anything. Who cares why he moved back to his hometown? Honestly, has nothing to do with the murders. Who cares if he was doing noise complaints when he was over at Western Washington University? Who cares if he had a reckless driving charge? The way she digs into these people's past is just gross, in my opinion. It's really it's yucky. And I've seen some of her lives where she just almost cyber stalks these people's accounts. She digs into all their photos and then digs into all their friends' photos, and it just makes you feel really, really gross because there's no reason to dig into these people like this. It's just ugh. And now in this next segment, she starts bringing up some unrelated people again and claims she digs into these things, but has some things wrong.
Many of us who follow this case and who know the things, like mainstream media, they're not telling the people that are like, oh, he's guilty, hands down, because they're not looking into what we're looking into. They don't probably know about Caden, how he was involved in this, or how he knew everybody, how he was friends with these people. He doesn't know about Lake Campbell or Emma Bailey's best friend Aiden and her mom Cindy Barnhart, who is the freaking dance and cheerleading instructor, and how, I don't know if Emma lived there, if she was like fostered by them. I don't know where her parents are. Emma's parents, I know they live right around there, but it shows her being with Cindy's kids most of the time. And Cindy, the mother, being, with cheer and dance, that's a lot of time spent doing that. And Emma was good at it. Aiden, good at it, both of them. But what does that entail? That entails them wearing makeup, very heavy makeup, at a very young age when they're in those competitions. It entails photographs that I've seen of both those girls walking around the Vegas Strip at about 13 years old. Pictures of them laughing, saying they got locked on a roof and they couldn't get down. That was like at 14 years old. What are they walking the Vegas Strip at 13 and 14 years old?
She just keeps throwing those names out there that have nothing to do with the case. Caden, his overdose, nothing to do with the murders. Emma Bailey being friends with Cindy Barnhart's children. So what if she spends a lot of time around them? She was obviously doing dance with the daughter. Lake Campbell and Aiden Campbell have nothing to do with the murders. And as far as Vegas and them being in Vegas as 13-year-olds, yeah, a lot of the big dance competitions for the West Coast take place down in Las Vegas. And yes, girls that are in dance and cheerleading wear a lot of makeup when they're 13. I fail to see how this conversation is relevant again, it's just one of those gross situations where she's digging into people's lives that they don't need to be dug into because they're not relevant to the murders.
And then you got to think about all the other things, all the other the people, that Hudson Lindau, Hannah Clary, the ones that passed prior to Kaylee, Xana, Maddie, and Ethan.
Since people keep wanting to bring up Hudson and Hannah, let's reiterate again. Hudson's death was a drowning. He was drunk, was walking home, back to the dorms, fell, hit his head, and landed face first in the creek. There was no foul play. Hannah's was an accidental overdose, and her dad has asked repeatedly that people stop bringing her up in relation to the murder case because her death has nothing to do with it, and her death was not foul play.
Ethan and Hudson rushed together. They were good friends. In fact, Kai Johnson, who is still, he's a Sigma Chi, he was really good friends with Hudson. In fact, he was teaching him like Japanese or something, his language. I think that Kai is either one of his parents is Japanese, and then white or whatever, Caucasian. And he was teaching Hudson, and I got this through the memorial, Hudson's mother speaking through the memorial, that Kai Johnson and Hudson were best friends.
Oh, a lot of wrong to unpack there in that segment. First of all, Hudson was not a Sigma Chi. He was not in the pledge class. He was not good friends with Ethan. Here's the picture of the Sigma Chi 2021 pledge class. You can see he's not in the picture. Also, the Kai that's being referred to is not Kai Johnson. It's this Kai. And he was teaching him Korean. So I also posted a little segment from the what the mom said in the memorial, if you would like to take a look at that.
There's photographs of Hudson the night before he passed, standing on the side of the King Roadhouse with their back to basically Xana's window, taking a picture with what looks to be Xana, and I don't know who the other person was. I thought it was Jack Showalter, but I'm not sure.
Okay, here's that picture, and it was not from the night before he passed away. If you notice, there is a lot of snow on the ground, and he passed away on the night of April 30th. Also, that was not Xana and Jack Showalter in the picture. I know their faces are blocked out, but the original has been around out there as well, and it was not either of them. One also needs to keep in mind that just because a photo is taken in that neighborhood with the house in the background does not mean anything related to the murders. That neighborhood was known for a lot of parties, and I'm sure there's a lot of people who had that house in the background in their photos.
And then the next morning, they find him at Paradise Creek. My thought from the very beginning was that everyone in that house knew exactly what happened to Hudson. I don't think they were all involved, but they all eventually knew, because how could you not know? That area is so condensed, so freaking condensed, that area that we were so used to seeing. Sigma Chi across Banfield, the Queen Apartments, Linda Lane Apartments, next, and then Linda Lane Road, King Road, Queen Road, Jack's, Hunter, Taylor Apartments, that whole thing. That place is on top of each other.
Well, yeah, they all did eventually know what happened to him because the news reports came out about him drowning in the creek. But they had nothing to do with his death. In fact, his friend Annika had even put out a TikTok video about how she had walked part way with him. And wished she had walked the rest of the way with him, but she thought he was sober enough to make it back to his dorm by himself. It wasn't hazing. It wasn't anybody intentionally harming him. He was drunk and slipped and fell. Unfortunately, that happens. Look at Riley Strain. I mean, there's lots of other cases where people have fallen, hit their head, and people will say, well, there was only 1 inch of water in the creek. Well, no. Paradise Creek was having its spring runoff. It was at the highest levels that it is during the year. But even if it was only 1 inch, you can drown in 1 inch of water. He hit his head. He was unconscious. He was face down. There was water in his lungs. It was a drowning. It wasn't foul play. And to try to relate that to the King Road murder somehow is just ridiculous. Now, as far as her saying that area was all condensed, yes, where the King Road house is condensed. However, that is not where the drowning took place. He was walking from a party in a different area back to where the dorms are. And I'll show you on the map where it was at. So it had nothing to do with the King Road neighborhood at all. So here's the area where he drowned, and you can see the UI Catholic Center in the background. It's not a real condensed area in that spot. If you look at the map, the big red dot is near where he drowned, and then the cross is where that Catholic Center was. And if you see over to the left where it says Theophilus Tower, that's where the dorms are. He was headed back to all the dorms that were over that way. And then down towards the bottom left of the screen is where King Road was. So you can see it wasn't near them at all. So it had nothing to do with that neighborhood, nor would anybody of that neighborhood really known what was going on when he fell in the creek, because it wasn't near there.
To the King House, where the president now, who got there in 2019, is said to have lived. He claims he doesn't remember that. He says his dad bought and sold properties, and then he turned, bought and sold them, basically flipped houses. That's what he claims. His dad knew Perky. His dad knew Dan. What else does Scott Green know? Mr. Coomer. His dad's name was Coomer. Coomer L. Green, I believe. And Scott is Scott Coomer Green.
Not sure why she seems to have so much resentment in her voice towards Scott Green. Not understanding that at all. But according to Scott's bio, they moved to Boise in 1969. So, yeah, I doubt he even lived in that house. And if he did, it would only have been for 2 years when he was very little. So he wouldn't have remembered it anyways. And I'll show you the deed records. So here's the current deed right now that shows it was gifted to the University of Idaho on 2/15 of 2023. Then here is going clear back to the start. Scott Green's dad purchased it June 20th of 1967, and then he sold it in 1971. And then you can see the purchase history for Scott Perky. Perky actually purchased it in 1998 and then sold it in 2002. And then we'll take a look at Dan Etsy there as well. So Etsy is 1122 King LLC, and he purchased it November 9th of 2018. So there is no indication that Scott Green's father knew either Dan Etsy or Scott Perky. Neither of them come from Idaho. Perky lived in Moscow for a little bit while his wife was going to school at University of Idaho. There is nothing showing in this obituary even of Green's father that he even went back to Moscow after they moved to Boise. So I don't believe he ever crossed paths with Scott Perky or Dan Etsy. So that's kind of a crazy claim for Bubbly to be making.
So people that are out there are saying, oh no, the frats couldn't have done this. Oh, those guys, I mean, they're just kids. They couldn't have done this. How could they have done this? Oh, bullcrap. I don't believe that for a second. With the amount of help that they get through the Greek road system is unreal. It's unreal what they cover up, what they sweep under rugs, what the attorneys just make go away. And when you've got alumni all up in every position in that courthouse, in the police departments, the fire departments, running the businesses, running the school, You don't think that alumni in there is going to protect the name of the Greek world, the fraternities, the chapters in there? That's what got them where they are today. It's because they protect their own. See, they took their own vow. They took they when they pledged their code of silence. They pledged the code of silence, the non-disclosure, whatever it is. Talk, the where you don't talk. You just don't. You have to sign a paper. Same with the 911. You contact. You don't call the police first.
This is the University of Idaho Panhellenic Crisis Management Plan. So this is over every single sorority on campus at University of Idaho. And you notice right there it says, please acknowledge if anyone is injured or you are in immediate danger, call 911 first. That is the policy. You call 911 first. And I don't know of any sorority that doesn't have that also as their national crisis management as well. You always call 911 first. And I know some of you might say, well, maybe they changed this after the murders, but let me show you when this document was last updated. You'll see right there it was updated in 2019. Now, the fraternities also have a similar crisis management plan. And this is actually from the Sigma Chi crisis management plan. And it says, in the event of a serious situation, contact the proper authorities, police, fire, paramedics immediately. So again, you are to call 911 first. It was a very stupid rumor that got started by certain content creators about calling the chapter first instead of 911. And that rumor needs to be put to bed once and for all.
Although in this case, I don't think it really would have mattered. I think it would have been the same no matter what, because all of them have, most of them, not all of them, but they're alumni from the University of Idaho and or Wazoo. And don't think Wazoo isn't in on this, because they're in on this big time. Their hands are just as dirty, and their department, their law enforcement is just as dirty, if not more so in certain areas. And it's documented. It's not just, I'm not making this stuff up. It's documented.
Yes, it is documented that Washington State University Police had an issue that started in 2020 and ended in 2022, where they had a sergeant that was having sex on campus with employees and even students. And 3 other officers knew what was going on and didn't do anything. So they all resigned before they could be fired, and the investigation was turned over to the correct people. I don't believe they will be getting their pensions, because it's going to the personnel agencies that handle all that with all the findings. But that has nothing to do with the Idaho 4 murders. A sergeant having sex on campus, WSU doesn't have anything on their hands in relation to the Idaho 4 murders. I mean, yes, Koberger was a student over there, but the faculty couldn't have known that he was going to go murder 4 people. So for her to make accusations that U of I police and WSU police basically have blood on their hands, I'm sorry, but that's just ridiculous. Neither department had a hand in those murders.
Those people, and I'm not saying these are the only universities, because it's rampant, it's everywhere. It's just getting worse, and some are worse than others. And I believe these 2 schools are pretty bad. From what I've done, I spend morning, noon, and night doing this, you guys. That's what I do. The sorority girls that were pushed out of windows. The sorority girls were given a drink with something in it, which made them wake up the next day wishing they probably never went out that night. No one is safe.
So she does this all day, but still can't get her facts straight. Thank God she's not one of the investigators that was working on this murder case, because it never would have been solved. WSU and U of I have the same problems that other colleges have. In fact, actually at a lesser level. What's happening right now is because of the 4 that were murdered at University of Idaho, the community has been put under a microscope. So everybody's looking at every little thing that's happened at both universities since they're only 9 miles apart. If you put a microscope on any college or any city in the US, it would look to you like all kinds of things were happening on a daily basis because that's all you're focusing on. Okay? There was a man that died of a health ailment outside of our student union building, but people took that and ran with it as possibly being related to the murders. That's how ridiculous these content creators are being about things. And roofing drinks, that happens all across the world. That happens in nightclubs a lot. That's not something that's just college campuses. And getting pushed out windows, nobody was getting pushed out windows. There's some people that fell out windows at WSU and U of I. You are told when you move into the dorms not to sit in the windowsills. But college students, being college students, don't exactly do the smartest things sometimes. And they sit in the windows. And then unfortunately, sometimes they fall. That has nothing to do with crime or anything like that. It's just accidents from young people thinking they're invincible.
Everybody. You guys are all disposable to them. That's why the bids, that's why rush is so important. They got to get more and more in there. Because there's always those ones that are not going to have those frat bones or sorority bones. And one of them, big time, all of them. I don't think Kaylee, Xana, Ethan, or Maddie had those bones. And by that, I mean they had somewhere down there was some morals somewhere, right, that came bubbling up that made them realize, oh, this is not for me, in my opinion. And what does that do? That creates havoc with the Greek system. Because you pledged, you passed all the things that you were supposed to pass in order to get into this society, and now you want to back out. So backing out to them, in my opinion, means that code of silence is no longer. So what they think you're going to talk, whatever it is, you can say, "Oh no, I never say anything," but that's not. You're backing out. You took a pledge. You promised. And now, due to you quitting that puts us all in danger, because they've all not maybe all at that point, but they know secrets. They all know secrets. I was going to play these videos and I just started talking, and it's already almost an hour, and I have so much more to say, but I'm just going to let it go like this. These kids you're looking at right here, they took the lives of other people. Look at how young they are. They're probably, since being so young, probably not in any type of Greek system at this point. You can probably count on that.
There's no one put in danger when somebody leaves a fraternity or sorority. There's no secrets that anybody's worried about. I talked about it earlier. The only thing they ask that you not divulge is the ritual when you're initiated. That's it. This is not nuclear codes. This is not anything that anybody is in danger over. And fraternities and sororities don't sweat too much when somebody leaves, because college is a volatile time and they know that people are going to come and go. Students drop out, students transfer college, people leave sororities, people leave fraternities. It's not a big deal. And Bubbly's trying to make it sound like it's a big deal and that it puts people in danger and that people with morals don't have the sorority bones. I don't even know what the heck this whole talk about the bones to be in them. Also, from what we could tell, Kaylee, Maddie, and Xana did not demember from their sororities. They just went inactive. So they were still listed as members. And if you notice, both of their sororities that the 3 were in 2 different sororities honored them after the murders because they were still members. They just went inactive. which a lot of people will do for their junior or senior year, especially if they have a lot of classwork and internships and jobs and everything. So it's really disheartening to hear people paint with a broad brush like Bubbly does about those two communities, about the people in the Greek system, about the people that live there, that work there. I just wish people would come visit Pullman and Moscow and they would see it's not some horrible hills have eyes type of place that people like Bubbly try to make it out to be. So hopefully this video was informative and that I cleared some things up for some people. I know that there's some that are still not going to believe anything I say, and that's fine.